You're watching or listening to Strangers in Space, and for the next 60 minutes, we're going to be doing our Season 1 review, because it's 1960 to 2005 all over again, so you don't have to. Hi, I'm JR.
Hello, I'm Ben.
Hi, I'm Dylan.
Hi, I'm Mark.
And I'm Simon.
And so the four of you haven't been, well, basically the four of you haven't been around for our Saturday afternoon reviews of the episodes themselves. Dylan, I think you made one, is that right?
Yeah, I made Boom.
The best one. Discuss. Not according to the listeners. More of which later, because the listeners' the listener poll is going to be next week, and the results of that will be out then. Although I've been adding up the scores as they come in, and it's pretty much decided. Boom. Boom didn't win.
Oh, great.
I got a question for you all first, though, seeing as you've not done these, and it's thus because we had the Three Tenants specials. So the start of RTD2 was last November, and then we had Ncuti Gatwa's first episode at Christmas. So by the time the season rolled around itself in May, we'd had about 5 months of sitting on that one episode with Ncuti Gatwa in, and 4 episodes of the sort of second coming of RTD. So I kind of, before we talk about what you thought about it, I just want to know what your expectations were at that point, with just one Ncuti Gatwa episode and the 4 episodes going in. What did you expect from the season? Did you have any expectations from the season? And Ben, I'm coming to you first because you're a newbie. Not really a newbie altogether, but you're a newbie. This is your second go on this podcast. So
Sure. Well, thanks very much for having me. What did I expect?
Well, we just want to say thanks very much for having us, because Ben, it really was a pleasure, and that's why you're on the podcast now.
Oh, shucks, guys. Come on. I'm uncomfortable with genuine sentiment on a Doctor Who podcast.
Certainly won't get any of that on Doctor Who.
What did I expect? So I watched Church on Ruby Road around my wife's family's house. We stuck it on the big telly. Everybody wanted to watch it. It was the usual chaos of a Christmas front room. So I feel like I got the gist. We looked at the action. I was watching with my 4-year-old nephew. He was annoyed every time there was a suggestion of goblin, but no full frontal goblin. He wanted to see. He wanted to see the goblins. It was just that general chaos that you watch something on a Christmas day. There's conversations happening on one side of the room. There's presents opening on the other side of the room. You're not really paying attention, and I got a general sense of it. Watched it back again. There wasn't much more to it than the general sense that I got from it. So yeah. I think I thought, and because it looked very like RTD1 Doctor Who, I think any expectations I had, I slightly tempered them for going into this Ncuti Gatwa series. And I think that was the right thing to do because it looks very familiar. It looks new, but it also looks very familiar. The characters,
it's a bit like
very familiar.
Yeah.
The scenarios, the places where the drama takes place. I'm glad
it's RTD1 in HD, really, isn't it?
Yeah, a little bit more colourful. I certainly think that. And I think we all probably agree that RTD1 was quite cartoonish, cartoon strip colourful as well. So I'm glad that. What expectations did I have? Not a lot, but that's not to frame that as a bad thing. In general, for the series, I think there were. If we're going to talk about kind of,
we'll talk about the series itself in a minute.
Sure.
I just wanted to I'll go around the circle and find out what everybody else thought going in, and then we'll find out what they thought coming out, and then we'll go through the episodes. But Simon, how did you feel about it by the time we actually got to the first 2 episodes as it happened? What were your feelings about it then?
What, my expectation, or actually?
What you were feeling about things as it was about to start. What your expectations were. What place were you in?
I don't know about expectations, but certainly hopes. The hopes were that the man Russell T Davies had matured, and therefore his writing might have matured in some respects. Yeah, I think that's pretty much where I'm at, really. So those were my hopes, because there were elements to those 3 episodes where you did think, oh, things have kind of, maybe, I don't know if the word is refined, but it felt just a little bit more, don't know about gritty. There just seemed to be a little bit more substance to some of the ideas. But yeah. That's all I'm saying for the moment.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong, actually. The 3 Tennant specials, I think, probably for me, felt slightly more substantial than I expected them to. Or certainly the second 2 did, maybe not the first one. Mark,
Yes.
another unknown quantity, because, again, you've not been on any of the reviews. So what did you think?
I did 73 yards. I did do that.
Oh, did you?
But,
fair enough.
What was I expecting? I think I was kind of just expecting the same old RTD model, which we didn't get, which I'm very pleased about. But in terms of actually what I was expecting, because we knew we had the Beatles in episode 2, we knew there was like space babies in episode 1. I'm like, all right, future, past, contemporary Earth, rinse, repeat, big baddie at the end. And that is kind of what we got, I suppose. But that was what I was expecting. But I think for the most astute take on this, my girlfriend said to me the other day, it's funny, isn't it? All these 20-year-olds that have been watching Ncuti Gatwa in Sex Education, all really excited to maybe tune into Doctor Who and see what it's like now. Tune in, it's the same old shit they've been watching when they were living. And I think that's kind of where we're at with this, but we'll see.
We'll get into it. Dylan.
Yes.
Everybody have a drink for this.
Yeah, I almost dread to ask, but I'm certainly the second half of the question. And what did you think is the question I'm dreading to ask? But Dylan, what were your expectations going in?
So my expectations still after the 60th, which I didn't love, but I didn't loathe. I mean, the Star Beast aside, which I loathed. My expectations were, okay, well, this is familiar territory. Perhaps we're going to get something different. Then Ruby Road happens, and we do get something different, but it's just not very well thought out, well structured drama. So my anticipation was at an all-time low, and then I saw the trailer, and my anticipation just sort of went even further below that all-time low. And but then I watched the trailer on a bigger screen on a television, and I was like, actually, no, this looks great. I'm in. And I watched the episodes, and I wasn't in.
Right, I'll stay with you then, Dylan. So now a sort of general, what did you make of the series? And then we'll talk about the episodes we liked, the episodes we didn't like, and so on. But now I want you to fast forward 6 weeks, because that's all it was between the first episode and the last.
Oh God,
6
it was,
weeks.
wasn't it?
7 Saturdays, that's 6 weeks between them. That's
It
all
felt
it was.
like a
6
lifetime.
weeks. But I'm staying with you, and I'm going back round in the other order, Dylan. What are your feelings about it now that it's done?
I pretty much despised everything about it. I say that there were episodes I liked, but ultimately I do not like this take on Doctor Who. I do not think it's written by someone that respects his audience, knows his audience. And I'm not talking about Doctor Who fans. I'm talking about a lot of the minorities that he claims to represent and he claims to be telling stories for. I don't think he's the best person to tell these stories. And I don't like that Doctor Who's been turned into just some ordinary guy. It is not a program I recognise. And I don't think I'll ever watch this series of Doctor Who again. I don't think there's a couple of things I liked, which I guess we'll get into as we go into the episodes. Yeah. But as far as I'm concerned, this is the nadir of Doctor Who, and I include like all the trashy classic series stories. But I like an extreme.
Clearly, Mark. Now that it's over, what did you make of it?
So I think I came out of it thinking, yeah, great, that's all very entertaining Doctor Who, but it's not groundbreaking. It's not. This isn't the big reboot we got in 2005, and I think actually that's what we needed at this stage. What we didn't need was, if you're going to bring all these kids over from Netflix, which RTD says he was there to do, and that's an interesting thing. He says, "Oh, I was brought in to bring in the younger audience, and I've done that, but the ratings have remained roughly the same as Jodie Whittaker and Peter Capaldi." So,
But there is a
I
reason
don't.
for that, apparently. So do you want to hear the
Right,
reason for
okay.
that? So
We'll go
the
for it.
reason for that apparently is because they're doing repeats on BBC Three. So you've got hundreds of thousands of under 25-year-olds watching on BBC Three whose numbers are not being counted in the 7-day figure because that's the figure for the BBC One broadcast.
Right.
Do we have viewing figures for those? Surely they they must be available if there's 500,000 kids watching.
Bob
Sorry,
only-
I sound like John the White, don't I, or somebody like that. This is type 40, right?
You only get the figures outside of the top 15, I think, if
Right.
you pay a subscription to Barb, which is something
Right.
like £35,000 a year.
I'm not that interested in these ratings to pay that subscription.
So,
Russell T Davis, just on that though, Russell T Davis said the BBC Three accumulated total for Space Babies is 1 million extra pairs of eyes. Now,
interesting.
even if that's true, that won't continue across the next seven episodes as well. It won't be as high as that across the next 7. But if that's right, that's 1 million people under the age of 30, probably, because BBC Three is not really watched by over 30s, generally speaking.
He did also say in that interview, didn't he, that one of the interviews, that it was the under 30s, 16 plus, so it's not the kids. Which again, sorry, I know this is your term, Mark. Which again, when you've got things like Space Babies, which are clearly aimed at kids, like, why are you making a kids show for a bunch of 18-year-olds? It just it comes back to this thing of, who is this for? Sorry,
I'm not. So we're getting deep into the weeds now. Before I've even finished going round in a circle, haven't I? And I was just going to do this as an interview where I didn't throw my opinions in, but now you've prompted me.
I wish I'd never
So,
bloody said anything.
I think the Ruby and the Doctor relationship is aimed at teenagers, the YA audience. I think RTD has always aimed Doctor Who at the YA audience primarily. Look at Rose and Eccleston and Rose and Tennant. That is basically aimed at sort of 13 to 20-year-olds. I think that is the primary market for Russell T Davis's Doctor Who. And then I think he wants to pile on viewers at either side of that age group. But I definitely think 13 to 20 is RTD's sweet spot. But I think the trouble is, that was RTD's sweet spot 20 years ago when he was 40, when he was only 20 years older than those people. Now he's the same amount older again on top of that. Maybe he's not quite hitting that sweet spot anymore. Anyway, back to Mark.
Yes, sorry. So I don't think it was a groundbreaking thing it needed to be. And I think for what we've just touched on, because it's a 60-year-old Welshman writing for a young adult audience, and I get there's probably logistical reasons as to he's written the majority of this series, but I did feel like after the Chris Chibnall era,
Mark is breaking up.
Sorry,
you disappeared.
I just felt really regressive after having so many new writers in the previous years, just have Russell T Davis, Stephen Moffat. It just feels regressive. And also, I get the idea of we're pitching this show to a new audience, a young audience, and kids love mythology. Kids love to do deep dives into the mythology of a show, but they've got to get into that show first. And I don't think you get into that show by going, "Oh, my granddaughter Susan lives over there," and Ian and Barbara, they were teaching that school, and we all got together and we traveled through time and space. I don't think that's the way to do it, really. No. And having these constant references that's not for the new audience. That's for us, and we're just going to be disappointed by the end of it. So I just make new, exciting Doctor Who adventures that aren't self-referent. It's the most referential to the past I think the show's been since the 80s.
I do think you can do that as long as you do it in a way that's not exclusive. and largely because, and I think that's why Russell T Davies insisted the whole thing was up on iPlayer, is so that if people want to investigate these references, it's right there on the same television set they're watching the current episode. Yeah.
The Sutek thing works because there's enough in the dialogue to go, yeah, this is a bad dude. Like, it doesn't matter if you've not seen it. But I mean, all the Susan stuff, who cares? Yeah, if you haven't watched Doctor Who before, I really don't get it.
It's a granddaughter, and that concept is enough to pique your interest, but you have to have that interest piqued after you've been introduced to the other characters properly, right?
Mm.
On the subject of Russell T Davies writing 6 episodes, here's a thing. The reason Ncuti Gat was not in 2 is not because they planned it that way, but because Sex Education overran and they had first dibs on his services, and Doctor Who was set up and geared up to go into production. I wonder if there are actually 4 episodes with guest writers, and Russell T Davies had to bin 2 of them and write quick replacements himself. So it might be that, I don't know, but it might be that Dot and Bubble and 73 Yards were written fairly late in the day, because this was happening. Simon, did you like it?
I think kind of on a visceral first reaction kind of level, a lot of it, that was all right, that kind of reaction. And every now and again there were some emotional beats and episodes that worked particularly well. And I remember particularly liking Rogue. Because it seemed to have a genuine, it just seemed to work. It just seemed to be a very well balanced story, and some of the emotional dynamics in there were really good, or I found them quite affecting. But again, to go back to what everyone's been saying, you just wonder, who is the show for? There's a saying, isn't there, about a friend to everyone is a friend to no one? Is that right?
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that, but you get the meaning I'm trying to say.
But also, same thing as Jack of all trades, master of none, really, isn't it?
Yeah,
same sort of dynamic.
Yeah. So, yeah, it kind of feels. My biggest, there were 2 feelings as I went along. A lot of it was, this is pretty good stuff. It's a lot of fun. It's obviously very entertaining, but at the same time, the feeling like I was being patronised. And that is my worst kind of Doctor Who, in as much as I feel like it's being shaped in such a way that I'm not particularly intelligent, and that I don't, it's in the acting style and it's in the way the stuff's delivered. I mean, obviously it's not as bad as the Chibnall era as far as, the over-explaining things.
I'm not sure, though, that it wasn't. I think it was, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, he was dumbed down again. It was all filtered down and simplified to the basic level, where the words that were coming out of people's mouths were words that people wouldn't say, and it's that kind of, it's a fantasy series. Yes, I get that. But equally, I just like things that are kind of genuine, and that I'd rather than be preoccupied with, who are the target audience and all this sort of thing, just write the stuff you want to write, because that's what Stephen Moffat did. And I'm not aware that he was constantly conscious of the audience and trying to play the audience and say, this is something that person will like, this is something that person will like, and you just kind of write yourself into a corner where in the end you're not actually sure what you're writing at all. So every one of those, the vast majority of those episodes in those series felt muddled and muddied. And whenever there was a good point to be made, it was kind of, what am I thinking of? I'm thinking of Dot and Bubble, which to me was a very confused story, had a lot of strong points to it, but equally was trying to do too much. So any message that was in there was getting mixed up and wasn't actually making it through to the audience. So it's a very messy series.
We'll get into the individual episodes. You know what I think? And so, Ben, I'll ask this of you. I'll put this point and I'll ask you if you agree or not. I think Doctor Who's lost its energy. In the Chibnall era, I think there was something about it being sort of made like prestige television that kind of slowed it down. But I think Russell T Davies has come out the other end, and instead of giving it a boost of energy, he's just got lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of very long scenes of people sitting around talking to each other, and there's no energy and there's no momentum. So Ben, do you agree with that? And what was your reaction overall, basically?
Yeah, okay. I think the highs of the series were giddy. I think the lows were infuriating. But isn't that just a series of Doctor Who? I think Simon, I think you hit it on the head when you said it being genuine. And I think that's what seemed to be the case. There seemed to be parts of the series where it really struggled with its own authenticity. There were some really electric moments, and it was great, some great episodes. But there were some moments where it was the televisual equivalent of that meme of Steve Buscemi being like, "Hey, young people," is what it seemed like. And I think it certainly struggled with some aspects of the architecture of the series. I broadly enjoyed it. The giddy highs were more than the infuriating lows. There were some
that Dylan, he had giddy eyes.
I did. There were some genuinely wonderful moments I really enjoyed. I made a little list of positives over the course of the day. I wanted to talk about it. I think Jinx Monsoon as Maestro was a great addition as a baddie. I loved the chemistry between Ncuti Gatwa and Millie Gibson. I know, Dylan, you're not going to agree with me here, but I thought Millie Gibson is a terrific actor. I really love watching the screen when she's on it. I didn't feel so bad that the Doctor wasn't in 2 episodes because she carried the show so well. I think Gatwa as a Doctor has energy. He's got charisma. He's certainly got talent. I just don't know if he's necessarily got the heft of other young actors who've played the Doctor, Matt Smith, David Tennant. I never really got the kind of the ageless quality. But I guess that's something to do with the, I think he says it in either Space Babies or Devil's Cord that when he bi-generated, there was also his soul was ripped in half as well. That there was some kind of weakness or kind of emotional weakness for the Doctor that he needed to build back up again. He just didn't have that ageless quality as a Doctor.
Let's stay there for a minute then. Ncuti Gatwa. I think as an actor, he's got everything he needs to be the Doctor. I wonder if there's a problem with a 61-year-old man trying to write a Doctor who's suitable for a 20-year-old audience.
Yeah.
Because, like they said, that the best thing about Matt Smith was his first series, because Stephen Moffat was just writing generic Doctor, and Matt Smith was bringing his personality to that material. And when they started trying to tailor the material to the actor, it didn't work so well anymore, because you can't sort of fake it. It's what Matt Smith brings to the material, not what the material brings to him. And I got the impression with Ncuti Gatwa that maybe Russell T Davies was trying to write the Ncuti Gatwa Doctor instead of just writing the Doctor and letting Ncuti Gatwa it up.
He does say as much in the Boom commentary.
Does he? Yeah.
With Moffat, he'd ask Stephen Moffat if, are you writing for a generic Doctor when you're writing the script, or are you writing for Ncuti Gatwa? And Moffat kind of says generally he was writing for just a Doctor, but there's a few bits that he threw in because he knew that Ncuti Gatwa would perform those quite well. So I wonder if the fact that Davies is asking that is a kind of smoking gun that he was like, okay, we've got this guy, I'm going to write Doctor Who for this young, cool guy. But the problem with that is, and Dylan's brother is responsible for this observation, not me. It's not an original observation, but the problem with that is that would be great if this was a proper hard reset with a young Doctor, full of energy, full of life, full of wonder. But in the last 3 episodes, it's just, here's more trauma. Here's more trauma for you to chew over. All the years of traveling you've been doing since Pyramids of Mars, you've killed everybody. Everybody's dead because of that. You see that hot bounty hunter that you quite liked. He's now in a barren dimension with some bird people. That's pretty horrible, isn't it? Oh well.
And that's
it's just. So what? We're just layering on the trauma again. When they did, I thought the bi-generation was such a good idea, because if you aren't going to completely hard reset the Doctor Who universe, great, fine, you've got a young Doctor now who doesn't have any of that baggage and can just go off and have adventures. And then they kind of just got bored of that about 5 episodes in and decided to start giving him more trauma.
And the trouble is, whereas when you sit down and plan, so let's count Church on Ruby Road, a 9-episode season with this Doctor, you can stick something like Boom, where you diminish the character physically, but allow the actor to sort of take over. But he's sort of diminished physically. You can stick that in the middle, and that's your Dr. Light episode. That's your equivalent of a Dr. Light episode. When you then lose the actor for the next recording block, and you've got that followed by 2 episodes in which he doesn't really appear, that's a gaping hole in the middle of your series. Of a whole third of your series is basically Dr. Light, and they're all together in the middle. So you've got 3 frivolous episodes, 3 episodes where he's not there, and then 3 episodes of trauma. So there's no development of the character. Instead, you've got leaps and bounds of the character, basically.
I wouldn't say Boom was Dr. Light. He's not.
No, it's not Dr. Light, but
but he's still front and center all the way through it.
Oh, he is, but I mean Dr. Light in the sense of, because he's stuck in this one place, it doesn't allow you to develop the character in the normal way that you would. And that's what I'm talking about, character development. So what I'm saying is you've got a 3-episode great big chunk in the middle of the series where the character development has to take, that kind of character development has to play second string to the logistics of the production. And I think that's the problem. It goes straight from 3 frivolous ones to a gap and then to 3 traumatic ones.
I do wonder whether it's the production that, in my opinion, has failed him. But I'm about to say something very positive about Ncuti Gatwa now. Ncuti Gatwa says in an interview that he doesn't really nail the role till the 2nd series. Now, I think about the things that excited me, the 2 moments that excite me about Ncuti Gatwa. The thing that made me hopeful after Church on Ruby Road was that scene that was put in by Disney execs that was shot with this year's Christmas special that I enjoyed. And then I watched the first 10 minutes of the Pyramids of Mars, Tales of the TARDIS, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, this more subtle, more calm version of him I really like. And I know he does do calm in some of the scenes, but I didn't feel it was either of those versions. So I am hopeful that a version of the character that I like will come out of this incarnation based on the 2 most recent things he's shot that I've seen.
Simon, what did you make of Ncuti Gatwa? And what did you make of Millie Gibson as well?
I mean, it's hard not to like Ncuti, isn't it? But
are you saying it's hard not to like him, and yet you managed?
But there is a feeling that he's just essentially doing some kind of audition for the work that he gets after this, because it feels like everything is, the volume is right up at 10 or 11, and now he's doing really intense. Now I'm doing this. Now I'm doing that. Hang on, everyone, and
everything he's doing it the most he can possibly do it.
Yes, absolutely. And the funny thing is that rather than coming across as this really emotional Doctor, I mean, this is why I liked Rogue, because you did get that. And I listened to the episode you recorded, and I know, JR, you didn't get this, but I got, there was a real chemistry between him and Rogue. Right. And so much of it was unsaid. Some of it was just like, well, of course, you've got this 1,000-year-old traveller who is just going to go on and he's just going to lose everyone he loves. So who's the ideal companion to him? Somebody who knows that life is finite and is exciting and wants to do all these different things. So they were a really good pairing, and I found it really believable that they would suddenly hit off each other. Whereas for the rest of the season, I'm guessing, and I suppose I took part of this from the Bide regeneration, that he'd become, no, I'm completely me now. And you think, right, this is a new Doctor who really knows himself. So you start to get this idea that, he's very intense about everything. He's very in touch with everything. He's extremely emotional, but he's extremely super confident and knows that he's a complete, space dude. But instead of being that, he kind of comes across as this person where you go to their house for a party and he says, have this drink, everything, life's wonderful, have this. And the moment somebody says, I don't like your carpet, he starts crying. and and it's that doesn't really seem. And you think, who are you? You know, are you actually? I think you're a little bit. You're not quite right. Something's going on there, and it's not quite right.
And the question, I suppose, is that a deliberate choice, or is that an accident of having this character being written by somebody in his 60s?
I don't know. I mean, I think the series has really suffered from being so short, and the fact that he was missing for so much of it, that you don't get any kind of texture, you don't get any kind of journey or slope. It's all, you know, if it was a chart, it would be blocky rather than this curve of things. And the same, you know, Millie Gibson's not been served well by the length of the series, I don't think. You know, and she did really, thank God she had 73 yards. You know, it was to show, and somebody else made the comment, I don't know if it was on this podcast or whether it's from a private conversation, that suddenly she came alive as an actor when Shooty wasn't there. And
I'm blown for that.
Right. And I think that was a big thing. And it felt like she was kind of trying to keep up with him in some respects, because she was very fast and very intense. You know, during Boom, you know, a Stephen Moffat episode, as far as I'm concerned, should be up there in the, you know, near the top of it. And it's somewhere in the middle if you look at my votes of where the stories come. And a lot of that was down to the fact that, you know, I didn't really believe her performance, because she seemed to be quite happy about getting blown up.
See, that's the weird thing,
enthusiastic.
Isn't it? 73 yards. If that was a late edition of some kind, then you've got to look at it and think, if we didn't have that episode, what would we know about her at all?
Mm-hmm.
Really, I think.
I mean, if the whole series had been written like 73 yards, and those stories had been, you know, he's just basically writing it down on the page and seeing what comes out and not overthinking it. And it just goes to show that, yes, he can come up with some great ideas. And the great thing about 73 yards is what's not there on the screen. It's what your brain does. It's the Donnie Darko thing. It's the blink thing. It's the gaps between the drama. It's the gaps between the lines that make it an exciting idea. But that was only happening a few times, and I kind of think that those high points were where the show was flexing its muscles. It was doing something a bit odd, and your brain's going, well, I don't quite know what this is, but I quite like it. So you know, it's those moments where the show makes you fly, makes your imagination fly, and all too many times it came crashing back down to earth because you felt like you were being manipulated.
I don't think he stuck many of the landings either, and sometimes that didn't really seem to matter, and sometimes it did. Ben, what did you make of Millie Gibson?
Loved her. Loved her performances. I loved the colloquial nature of the character. I mean, she's not really groundbreaking, as Dylan and Mark have said, about the production. She's not really a groundbreaking character, but she's an immensely personable and immensely attractive, not in the obvious sense. I mean, you know, like, it's a very inviting, very
likable,
warm, likable personality. I think she's very funny. She handles comedy well. I think she handles drama quite well. I think she does brilliantly that in-between thing, that kind of disbelief and ethereal confusion very well. I felt she was absolutely a safe pair of hands to have a Dr. Light episode, to lead a Dr. Light episode that was happening so soon into the life of the series. Considering we knew we were also going to get a Dr. Light episode, like another one later on. What did I make of her? Great. I think she's been ill-served by the series. I hope that she is a mainstay when Series 2 comes back. Dare I say it? I hope she features in Series 3 as well. You don't seem convinced.
She's in 2 episodes next year.
Oh, she's only in 2, so she's doing like a Martha Jones, is it?
She's in episode 4 and episode 8 or something like that.
Right.
Did she upset Julie Gardner as well, did she?
Yeah.
Allegedly.
The next season's sounding more and more appealing as it goes.
Have you got the girl from Boom?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure she'll be fine.
Russell T Davies really shoots himself in the foot here, doesn't he? I'm convinced the reason why we don't have Ruby next year is because Russell T Davies has it in his head that you have to have either a new companion or a new Doctor to start every series. And I think he shoots himself in the foot twice this year. First of all, he gets rid of Ruby before we've barely even got to know her, and she's great, but he replaces her with a character that we've already seen. Or with an actor, I should say, that we've already seen. So next year's companion is not going to be the big unveiling that it should have been, because it's somebody who was in one of the episodes this year. And then the other way he shot himself in the foot is this series should have launched with Ncuti Gatwa's big debut, and yet he'd already had 2 debuts. So this was his 3rd debut. And so, of course, there wasn't as much excitement about the start of this year, because we saw Ncuti Gatwa for not a huge amount of time, but for a substantial enough amount of time in the giggle. And they had a whole episode at Christmas to introduce him. And so now the series turns up and it's this guy. And yes, you did have, well, I guess babies that talk in the first episode. But that's not really a replacement for a new Doctor, is it?
Yeah, I mean, who was that for? Who was that for? That certainly wasn't for the young adults.
No.
They're not interested in babies, are they? Interested in making them, but they're not interested in.
I think it could have been, because if you look over movies like Look Who's Talking, they are big hits amongst young people because it's a fun idea. So they latch onto the concept.
Even now?
Surely not.
Then, at the time, I'm saying, when it was new. But that's my point. This should have been a version of Look Who's Talking that would have worked for an audience of that age now. I don't think that's what he made of it.
He picked the wrong film. He should have gone Short Circuit and got Chameleon back. It would have been a much better season opener.
Dylan or Mark, anything to add about Millie Gibson?
I just want to add to the positive voices before Dylan sort of wades in to give her a kicking.
Maybe you should let him wade in and then have a positive way to end the Millie Gibson conversation.
Because if we build up all the positive stuff, he just looks like an outlier, and he's I thought she was great. I'm a bit annoyed that we're not getting more over, because ultimately it's a bit of a paper thin excuse. Oh, you've met your birth mum. I'm going to leave you now. And it's like, normally when that happens, I mean, I'm speaking as I wasn't adopted. My mum was adopted, and she met her birth mother. And you have a sit down in a chat for a few hours, and you agree to keep in touch, and you build a relationship from there. You can still go off in the TARDIS. It's absolutely fine. Like, what are you going to be doing? Spending hours and hours and hours and hours and hours together. It doesn't really wash with me. It's not like the old days where the TARDIS can't just come back at the drop of a hat. So yeah, it's a bit annoying, because I think
it felt to me
Ncuti Gatwa and Millie have such good chemistry that it seems suicidal to just get rid of that after only 8 episodes. Well, 9 episodes if you include the Christmas special.
It felt to me like the manner of her leaving is Russell T Davies addressing the sort of egregious Donna thing where she gets all her agency taken away, and he replaces it with a scene in which Millie Gibson gets all her agency taken away because she wants to carry on traveling, and the Doctor says, "Sod off."
Yeah.
Dylan.
Even though 10 minutes ago he was like, "Now come on, are you sure you want to meet your mother, because she hasn't tried to find you in the past 20 years." And then so she does, and he's like, "Oh well, sod you then. See ya. Bye."
And everything was just a little bit too pat, wasn't it? This woman who's never sought to find her daughter in 20 years. And all of a sudden, she's best friends with the mother who's been bringing her up for the last 20 years. And, well, Dylan, what do you think of Millie Gibson before I get onto this rant?
I mean, she's great, isn't she? I think I had real trouble with her at Christmas. I thought she was far too theatrical. I thought that those performances, her performance and indeed Ncuti Gatwa sometimes stayed the wrong side of, like, it's 2024, like, television acting like that should not be allowed on television. It's like, we've just had loads and loads of realism. I don't care what anybody says about Ryan. He's a much better actor than
he's great
than her.
Tosin Cole is
yeah,
great actor.
A lot of people don't like him. But anyway,
they're wrong.
I thought she was terrible. And when it got to 73 yards, that was the first time I've ever turned off Doctor Who on a first watch because I realised it was just about her and I couldn't stand her. I did tune in and watch the rest of it later on down the line. And then Rogue happened and I was like, oh, actually, I want to hang out with these two. Neither of them pissed me off. And I was a little bit like, oh, do you know what? I'm with these guys. And I didn't mind her for the finale either.
Which two characters in Rogue was it that you liked?
No, as in her and Shooty, I suddenly...
I know.
So it was weird. I felt like they toned it down a little bit for the last 3 episodes. And I suddenly was like, okay, she's still not my favourite. Like, I mean, as a Doctor and companion duo, they rate very, very lowly for me. But I didn't want to smash my television like some rabid Ian Levine tribute act every time she came on the screen after that.
See, it goes back to what I said. It felt like 3 different series with barely anything connecting them. The first 3 episodes, the middle 3 and the last 3. Right, we're sort of running out of time to spend a lot of time on the individual episodes. Otherwise, we will be here all night. And England kicked off 7 minutes ago as we're recording. And I want to get to it and watch at least some of that match, despite the fact that there's
Catch
2
our night
Scottish...
there, mate. We're fine.
Did it not drop at midnight? I thought everything did now.
So what I propose to do is go through story by story and just ask you for a single sentence or sentiment to sort of sum up how you feel about that. So I'm not asking for literally a single sentence, but just a thought or a feeling about each of the episodes. Space Babies, then. Right, I'm going to do this randomly now. Mark, I'll start with you. Space Babies. What did you think of that?
I like the fact that he started the first proper Disney Plus series with an abortion, a statement on abortion and Roe v. Wade, but it's kind of let down by the fact there's a monster made of snot. So, swings and roundabouts.
Do you know, I think on the sort of woke versus no woke first debate, Disney versus DeSantis plants Disney firmly on the side of woke. So I don't think that was as big a surprise as people who weren't quite aware might have thought. Simon, Space Babies.
It could have worked.
Ben, Space Babies.
Profound embarrassment that made me question so much of my life experience and my intelligence and soul.
Was it one of those things that made you sort of go, you were watching the telly and probably at about the 32, 33 minute stage, you're thinking, I've done 157 episodes of On the Time Lash. What was it?
It was more than that. It was more than that. So a lot of my enjoyment of this series is linked to where my head is at on any given week leading up to the birth of my child. And I am...
So Space Babies was fear. That was what it was.
No,
fear.
well, the thing is, I know, like, obviously you've got the complementary kind of material that it's about babies, it's about birth, it's about looking after children. That never really entered into it. What it entered into is the fact that, like, there's a period of as a 40-year-old man, intense growing up that I'm going to have to do. And I just remember watching it and being like, this is one of these minutes. This is one of these programs where if somebody walks through the door right now, even if they're incredibly close to me and I can tell them anything in the world, I'll be desperately embarrassed if they catch me watching this. And I think I said this to Mark, and Mark was really good at talking me down about it, is that, like, the anger, the profound embarrassment that boiled up inside of me because of Space Babies. And I was like, why am I a 40-year-old man with a fucking mortgage and a baby on the way wasting my fucking time on this pissy show? When you asked at the start, JR, about what was my expectations, it fucking wasn't that. It wasn't bloody that, mate. I thought we were going to get, and I was just like, I remember standing in I said this on the Cybermen episode, of just standing in the shower, and you think, you intensely think about
it. Did, and I'm trying to get to the England match.
Sorry. Okay. I hated it. Mate.
Dylan, do I need to ask you?
I will say two things. It's irredeemable shit, and I will not believe there's an abortion allegory in it until RTD says there is, because, well, as he said it,
Ruby Sunday literally says, "It's not that fucking strange, mate." There's loads of other planets that let babies starve because they don't, they've forced them to be born when they didn't have to be.
I just think if Russell T Davies likes to tell you all how brilliant he was, and if he hasn't said it's in there, then it's not in there, because he would be on the go, "Aren't I so clever? Aren't I really clever? I'm so clever. I did a thing about abortion on Disney Plus. I'm so clever," but he hasn't.
Marvelous.
So it's not there. It's not there. I mean, it is there, but it's not.
Do you know what would have really...
It's more there than Kill the Moon.
What would have really settled this debate is if instead of calling the episode Space Babies, he'd have summed up the emotions of it by calling it Whoa versus Rad. Dylan, I'll stay with you. What did you think of the Devil's Cord?
Really enjoyed it. A lot of fun. Thought Jinx was great. It's one of the few episodes that I thought looked any good. Yeah, no major complaints apart from Millie Gibson.
Oh. Ben, Devil's Cord.
Yeah, with this one, I was back on board. Baby. Really enjoyed it. Loved the Doctor and Ruby in this. Such a great moment at the end. Sorry, I know you want to watch the football. Such a great moment at the end where John and Paul play the final chord, and it has to be done together because that's what music is all about. It's not about the Doctor and having it in his brain and the academics of it. It's about the making music together. I thought that was such a positive, wonderful, well dramatized, good looking episode and moment. Loved it.
Simon?
Yeah. It just worked. It was allowed to fly, and that worked, and it did something, and it's one of those where it could have gone wrong. Unlike the other one where it could have worked, this could have gone so badly wrong, but the casting was so good. Jinx Monsoon was amazing and carried the episode. The effects were amazing with all the notes going around. Again, that shouldn't have worked, but actually it really did work. The whole crawling into the piano, imagine watching that when you're really young, and you'd remember that for the rest of your life, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
And have a fear of pianos.
Mark?
Yeah, it's my favorite of the series, really. I think watching it, I was like, this is what I wanted from New Doctor Who. It's a story that you could have done at any point in Doctor Who's history, but there's just something about it. It's Jinx Monsoon. It's the big musical number at the end. It just felt fresh and new and really promising for what was coming next.
If you'd have done that story at any other time, it would have been a very different story, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Okay, Mark. Boom.
Yeah, I really loved it. It's I mean, look, it's Stephen Moffat. Just Russell T Davies is phoning him out going, "Can you do me a Doctor Who script, mate?" I say, "Yeah, fine, no worries. What if Doctor Who stands on a landmine? Great. Have you got anything else?" "Yeah, I'll just pepper it full of all references to all my old stuff." "Yep, great, go for it." But it's just really well done, very tense. I was gripped all the way through it. Yeah, really enjoyed it.
I can imagine that. Well, Stephen, what have you got? What if the Doctor stands on a landmine? Don't know. Anything else? Sinister ambulances? Yeah, great. Go with sinister ambulances. What do I do with sinister ambulances? What if I get the Doctor to stand on a landmine? Might have gone a bit like that. Ben, boom.
Okay. Really enjoyed it. Can't shake the feeling. It feels like slightly warmed over stuff that we've seen before.
Simon?
I have to agree with what Ben said, really. I really liked it. As soon as I heard the idea, I thought, oh, yeah, well, Stephen Moffat's come up with that idea, gone to RTD with it, and RTD's gone, brilliant, genius, just based on one idea. And it doesn't really expand on it. It does some nice emotional stuff. But then the child sort of standing there saying, "I'm trying to talk to my dad," while everything's about to blow up around them, and it doesn't quite. It's just Doctor Who. For some reason, they can't do kids, can they?
Dylan, boom.
Tired. Shooty Gatwa's worst performance by miles. Cheap looking Doctor Who running on empty. Like it's inexcusable to show things like that on television.
Well,
Be better. Be better. Where's the Disney money? Where's it gone? That could have been shot in 1980.
I feel that you were a ball hair away from having a massive like pinboard on your wall of just like budgets and like reporting and just like tying it all together to try and figure out where the Disney money's gone.
I was trying
and how it ties to Phil Collinson's, mortgage.
Overspending. Yeah.
Dylan, what about 73 yards? Cheer yourself up and tell me about that. The one that you turned off halfway through.
So the last 15 minutes, I was wrong to turn it off because the last 15 minutes was everything I wanted from this era of Doctor Who. I thought it was very exciting. The folk horror stuff was terrible. So it worked much better for the last 15, 20 minutes. But overall, why did it look like Goosebumps for half an hour? It's just like, it's 2024 again. Come on, be better.
Simon.
I think it worked, but I don't know whether it was intended that way. But I just think it worked. Yeah, but I agree with Dylan that the last 20 minutes were the best bit of it, and it was when it was at its strangest, it was at its best.
Yeah, fair.
But as I say, I don't know whether that's intentional or not, or whether it just happened that way.
Mark.
Yeah, I thought it was great. I mean, I think it's that thing that Russell T does where he's got to turn around a script quickly in the midnight camp. It's very, very inventive, brilliantly directed. I think the best thing about 73 Yards is Dylan Holmes Williams as the director, because he really makes all of that work. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. That was the kind of weird out there Doctor Who that I kind of wanted from this series, really.
On that note, looks like Dylan Holmes Williams is on board for at least the start of, if not the whole run of the spin-off, if that is indeed what they're scouting around or starting on. There's pictures come out today of them either scouting or else about to start production on something. Looks like scouting, but you can't really tell. And Dylan Holmes Williams is the one who's put out these pictures on his Instagram, I suppose. And that looks like it's going to be the land between the war and the sea. They look like they're on a cliff edge or something. But back to more mundane matters. Ben, 73 Yards.
Yeah, it's my favourite one of the series. I know you want to hear the football, so I'm not going to get into it. It's just another one that matched, but this time positively, with mentally where I was on that given moment. And I thank it for being broadcast. I thought she was great. I thought Millie Gibson was great. Didn't miss the Doctor at all. Loved it.
Ben is joining us from the 1950s, where I'll be going on to listen to the football afterwards.
You've already qualified. Don't worry about it.
We haven't. That's the problem. Ben, I'll stay with you. Dot and Bubble.
Oh my god, I honestly don't know. And I think that's probably acceptable to say. I honestly don't know. I think it took me by surprise. It made me laugh. It profoundly annoyed me. I can see where it has merit, and I can see where it was very good, and I can also see where it utterly and completely fails. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? We could do a whole episode, and I know you already have done, on Dawn Bubble. And I honestly, I just don't have an answer for you. I don't know.
I think it's a hair's breadth. Oh no, sorry. In Scottish parlance, as demonstrated by Mark, a bull's hair's breadth.
A bull's breath. Oh my god,
disgusting.
I don't want to be around
That's
for that.
disgusting, Jay. How dare you?
From being like one of the best Doctor Who episodes of the entire modern series. It's just so spectacularly new and different.
Yeah.
I don't know if he quite pulls it off, but it's definitely edging into that territory. But Mark.
Yeah, I like this. I mean, the first 15 minutes was hard going for me until I realized that, oh, it's okay. I'm supposed to hate these people. It's absolutely fine. I'm in. Let's go. And I don't have an issue with the kind of switch from the kind of Gen Z coding of it all into the sort of actually the racists, because ultimately they're both really about the same thing. It's just about how social media blinds you to worlds outside your own experience, and that could
Puts
either
you in a
be
bubble.
you're just you could either be you're self-obsessed and all you do is watch dance videos, or it can be you hate black people. And those two things can still be in the same episode, and I think it works. And yeah, I thought it was really good and really inventive.
Dylan?
I really enjoyed it. I thought it looked like dog shit. Again, where's the Disney money gone? I don't think Russell T Davies should have written that episode, and I think the fact that this is the only point so far that the series has addressed the Doctor's race, and that's how they've done it, is really insensitive and a really bad decision. And I think this will end up in a category like Talons of Weng Chiang in 20, 30 years' time, where it's not an acceptable bit of Who lore and people argue about it on Dot and Bubble or whatever we've got by then because Twitter's gone.
And Simon, what did you think of Dot and Bubble?
It should have been up near the top, but instead it just felt like it fumbled. It fumbled things, and points that it could have made far more clearly and maybe cleverly. I don't know. There's a lot I liked about it. I love the horror aspect of it. I love the way that suddenly their bubble that was so safe was suddenly claustrophobic. I thought that was amazing. So it was doing some really great Doctor Who-y stuff, but trying to make these major points, and then particularly that final scene just didn't seem to work. And again, Ncuti was kind of, I know it's an important point to make, but it just felt kind of overacted. And you could almost imagine the filming situation where everyone's going to stay quiet and no, shh, everyone, Ncuti's acting, let him go. But I feel like that all the time with him. So, yeah.
Maybe if they'd dropped the racism and just made it about the horror of people being trapped willingly in this situation. Anyway, Simon, sticking with you, and you kind of already talked about this a bit, but sum up on Rogue.
Rogue, I thought was really great, really great. I don't think he was doing anything over complicated or anything like that. I know we got a new Captain Jack, but I just love him. I think he's great. I think he's amazing in Hamilton, and I just thought he lit up the screen really, and didn't really need to, people were saying, oh, he didn't really do much. Well, he didn't need to do much. And I completely bought into the attraction between him and the Doctor. And yeah, like you say, Millie Gibson was really great in this, and the balance was just right. And even the aliens, I loved the fact that the aliens all look slightly differently. They're all birds, but they weren't all necessarily the same species. So it showed a load of imagination. And I hadn't been looking forward to it because of the whole Bridgerton thing. I just thought it was a really obvious joke, but actually it really worked. So yeah.
Mark?
Yeah, I really liked this as well. I wasn't a huge fan of the bird people thing. It just felt like a sort of big step back to 2007. But at least you're right, Simon. They did look like different birds rather than just a bunch of rhino heads on some spacesuit.
Yeah,
at least they
and I love
in
that you
boiler
do,
suits this time.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah, like the flies in the boiler suits and all that kind of stuff. Cats in pilot gear. But no, I really liked it, and I think I don't think Rogue is Captain Jack. Rogue's the Doctor. Rogue's Christopher Eccleston. That's what it is. It's this kind of new, vibrant, sort of full of life Doctor meeting somebody who's a lot like he used to be, and kind of trying to bring him out of his shell, and sort of falling in love. And I thought that was all great. And I think it pushed things in a way that maybe the 13th Doctor and Yaz thing should have done a bit more of, but I do also concede that they do it in about 45 minutes, and then that's probably going to be the end of it. So, what's better? I don't know. But
Ben?
I think I could probably take it or leave it. I've no complaints about it. I thought very well performed, looked great. The writing was very deft and economical. I like Jonathan Groff. I thought everyone was. Indira Varma is great in this. As I think I saw someone on Twitter say she understood the assignment, and it was to just be this fantastic bird hostess. So I really enjoyed it. I hope it pays off. I hope that's not it. It seemed like it was a significant thing, and then suddenly he's just away in another universe, and we never see him again. I hope it pays off to something else.
Dylan.
I thought it was the best of the season. I do have a few issues in that it was played as like it felt like it was played a bit more as a revelation that the Doctor might like men, but I feel like it's sort of been implied throughout the whole of the new series that the Doctor might swing both ways, and he's just now in a point of his life where, hey, I'm really comfortable, which is undone by the next episode. Like, I'm trauma free. I'm just, a lusty space lad having sex with people. But then, yeah, it's kind of undone a little bit later on just by the fact that he's clearly still full of trauma and, is always crying and all that stuff. So, best of the season, but I don't think it necessarily fits with everything around it.
Right, and Dylan, splitting this one in two because, and I'm still desperate to get to the football, Ben, so I'm throwing in the football metaphors now. It definitely was a game of two halves. The legend, Dylan, of Ruby Sunday.
It was a great build-up. Murray Gold's best score. Quite like Doggy Sutek in this one. It was all a bit on the nose. It falls apart under scrutiny, but a lot.
I'm only asking for your thoughts on the first episode.
Yeah.
Though.
So no, I'm talking about the first episode.
Oh right.
It falls apart under scrutiny, but a lot of RTD's old Doctor Who did as well. But there was a certain tone and pace that the older stuff had for me that was present here that wasn't present in the rest of the series, where I was just going with it and going, this is really exciting. It's building to something. Great cliffhanger. Very excited. Can't wait for next week.
Simon.
Okay, one half I really loved. I loved the hologram, the whole moment in time, essentially because it's very similar to a story I wrote in Seasons of War. But the other half was just like Spy Kids meets oh god, what's that kids program? A really good kids comedy program about some kids that are spies and all that sort of thing. Anyway, I digress. What I'm basically saying is it was lots more patronizing, terrible overacting, and Jar Jar Blinks really annoying me. Yeah, so it was kind of marred by the setup, but I loved a lot of the ideas in there.
Ben.
It was fine. It was felt a bit like smoke. It was very difficult to get a hold on it. Like I can't not talk about it without talking about part two, because I think everything that I liked in part one was then just completely disregarded or thrown out the window in part two. And so
right. I'll come back to you then.
Yeah. So fine. It was fine.
Right, Mark, part one then, and I'll stick with you and go into part two, and then I'll come back to Ben.
All right. Does that make it easier? So part one, I think the first time I watched it, I was going along with it. Like, I was hooked all the way to the sort of big reveal. I hooted with laughter at it's the wrong anagram, even though it's not really an anagram. All of that stuff was very entertaining, very Russell T Davies season finale stuff. On the rewatch at the cinema before the Empire of Death, I was like, they do. Actually, I'd heard everybody say this over the week, but they do spend quite a long time in that room, just kind of pointing at things and looking at things, and it just needed to just be a little bit tighter, I think. But it was fun. And then the finale, like, it felt to me like Russell T Davies has seen Flux. He's seen the Pandora Core opens in the Big Bang, and he goes, "Oh, I could do that. That'll be marvelous. I'll do it way better." And actually, it's just kind of falls apart, really. And it does that thing that all Russell T Davies finales do, which is he sets up these impossibly high stakes and then kind of hand-wavily solves it. And don't get me wrong, the image of dragging Sutek through the time vortex looked amazing on a big screen. It was fantastic. But you can't escape the fact that you're taking the dog for a walk. Yeah, it's but I mean, he is the god of death.
And it wasn't a dog whistle, was it?
Yeah.
Why wasn't
and
it a dog
also,
whistle?
The biggest issue I have with it is the Doctor going, "Oh, you've turned me into this. I'm the bringer of death." As if that's a bad thing, and as if he's not impaled a Goblin King on a church spire on Christmas Day or Christmas Eve or whenever, I can't remember if it's midnight or what. Either way, come on, mate. I cannot stand Russell T Davis's insistence that the Doctor doesn't kill people or feels really bad about killing people. I mean, the list of the dead begs to differ, frankly.
No, I'm sorry. I'm afraid David Tennant, I'm the man who never would. Absolutely trumps all those other things you're talking about. Ben, tell me about Empire of Death.
I wonder if Doctor Who has run out of ways to do finales. I think this one was excessive and bloated and dumb, and I can see why people felt insulted. I can see why some people also enjoyed it, but it's in the category of the timeless children, is that we've gotten to a finale, and in the past, 20 years of each finale and each ending to a series trying to be bigger than the last, we're now at a position where nothing short of sheer ridiculousness will do. And as a result, it just goes to places which rather than be satisfying are deeply unsatisfying and irritating, and question your love of the show, question the stewardship of the show, question why you invest such time or money into this thing. It just didn't. There were intense moments of soullessness. There were intense moments of anger, but a soul searching, and none of it really in a good way. I just didn't enjoy it. I just didn't like it. I just think everything needs to be fucking toned down.
And there were intense sequences of people sitting around there were really long, really boring, really drawn out sequences, about 53 minutes worth of people just sitting around in rooms talking to each other. That's the way you end your series.
Yeah.
Some people run from some smoke on a bus and then everybody sits down.
But Stephen Moffat finales used to do that, and it was great.
But there was energy.
That was back when that's where they lived, and they were the appropriate mark on the scale. Like, we're now past that point. It's exemplified in the fact that the moment I saw the Rose Noble, I know everyone else got turned into dust as well, but the moment I saw Rose Noble getting turned into dust, I went, "This is," and there was still maybe about half an hour on the clock. I went, "This is going to be reset." Because there is no way that the next series is going to be Ncuti Gatwa's Doctor making amends for killing a trusted and loved companion's daughter. Like, I just knew it was like all these people are dying. I was like, the second I saw that, I was like, I'm not going to care about anything that happens. And then I watched it, and I didn't care about the woman who ran a shop made of sand, and I didn't care about Mel saying nothing for pages and pages of dialogue, and I didn't care about even the fact that, like, somebody pointed out, why is there a secret laser underneath the TARDIS console that kills the blasts? I was like, I don't care. Like, I knew this was going to happen. I knew it was going to be one of those cheeky little endings where it's like, oh, wink, wink to the Doctor and companion, and then they'd get some fucking hiking gear and fuck off. Like, I just don't. All of it was so annoying, and I'm not even getting into the way it fucks around the lore. I'm just like, all of this just is not touching me in any way.
Most of the supporting cast could have been dust from the start. The amount of shit they actually did in the 2 episodes. Rose Noble
mad to me.
Is like, why are you there? 16-year-old girl working in unit, doing absolutely nothing.
And her fee must be, high enough. It just seems insane to me, like an insane use of. That's where the Disney money's going, Dylan. It's casting Bonnie Langford and Yasmin Finney and all that to sit around and say nothing.
No, he's not. He's paying for all the tutors that are obviously still teaching these kids whilst they're at work during the day. It's like caravans full of guys with math books waiting for people to get off the set. Can I just before we finish, can I just talk about my favorite? See if you can catch it. It's really quick. Is when Morris?
That's only one thing I'm not going to catch, and that's the English match.
Now, Morris on his little machine gun Segway, right? There's a long shot. There's a kind of long shot showing down onto unit firing at the Sutek TARDIS, and the way he's shooting is right into a unit soldier. Obviously, also the colored flashes are put on by CGI afterwards, but he's just like machine gunning his little Segway, and like the trajectory is right at the back of, I think, Major Ibrahim or Colonel Ibrahim or whatever. And it was just like, nobody fucking cares. Nobody cares.
Dylan, at the risk of trumping Ben, do you want to tell me what you thought of?
If you'd have told me that this was a Trial of the Time Lord episode 14 situation where someone was brought in to write it who wasn't allowed to see what had happened in the rest of the series, but had been told it by a drunk John Nathan Turner over a bottle of wine late at night, I would believe you. I think it fails on virtually every level. I do not. I'm insulted, and I think the audience should be insulted by it. Not just Doctor Who fans. You can do whatever you want to the fucking lore. I don't mind. It's all a bit of fun. But literally to sit there and go, oh well, I saw Sutek fly into the time vortex, and I thought he could survive in Pyramids of Mars. What shall I kill him with? I know, the time vortex. It's like, and then to gaslight us all into, a woman in black pointing, it's snowing every time Ruby's around, and then the Maestro going, oh my god, she's got such a dark secret, to go, oh no, it was your fault, you guys all hyped it up too much, of course it was just an ordinary parentage. I wouldn't mind if none of that other shit was there and it was just ordinary. And then again, you sort of gaslighting the fans with the whole Susan thing, and it doesn't have to be Susan. I don't want to see Caroline Ford on television ever again, so it's fine. But this man just does what he wants and does not give a toss about the audience. He just, first draft, handed out, I'm the king of television. And as a result of that, I have sworn that I will not watch anything that Russell T Davies writes for Doctor Who unless everybody in these groups goes, it's amazing. I'm only watching guest writers. I hope he stops writing Doctor Who as soon as possible.
Well, I hope you enjoy your 3 episodes of Doctor Who over the next 7 years.
Guys, I've just muted Dylan for this bit, and what I'm going to do is, next time there's a really shit episode of Doctor Who, we all got to promise that we're going to tell him how great it was, okay? I've got a theory. Do you want to hear my theory? And then I'll come into Simon for some positivity at the end of this conversation. My theory is that Russell T Davies sat back and watched the last 15 years of Doctor Who, watched the shit that the fans gave Stephen Moffat, watched the shit that the fans gave Chris Chibnall, and said, Doctor Who fans, they're shit, aren't they? I know what I can do. I think you're right. I think Empire of Death is all about disappointment. But the problem is, Russell T Davies, as Dylan says, is at a point now where he's the king of television and he hands in first drafts, and a script editor is literally there to go, oh, you've spelt that word wrong. Like that's all a script editor does for Russell T Davies. It's proofreading. Yeah. I think another draft of this could have really and the whole series in general could have refined that into making a really incisive point about fan expectations, and Sutek's fandom, embodied, and his whole thing about Ruby's mother all make sense because the show hasn't been hyping it up for us, but has been showing us that it's important to Ruby. That's the fundamental problem with this whole series, is that it's showing us, the audience, the psychics know they've got to go to unit to, look at a VHS tape. But all the way through it, they're not telling us enough about how important it is to Ruby to find her mum.
Also, I just want to say that that allegory of sort of fandom would work, but it also, if you imply that Sutek is Russell T Davies, it also works. So he's built his empire of death.
But if you're telling a story about how ordinary human beings are great, then A, don't kill all but one of them off, and then B, have that one not really involved. Have ordinary human beings solving the problems, rescuing the episode, coming up with the solutions. But that's not really what happens. The only thing Ruby does is she's the one who puts the lead on Sutek, and that's about it, really. It's not like he tells a story.
TV. Yeah.
He doesn't tell us. Sorry, Simon, bring us some positivity at the end here. Tell us about Empire of Death.
I feel like the caretaker who comes on whistling and sweeping at the end of the apocalypse when it all dies down, and this is bloke going. That was all right, wasn't it? I only watched it once, and I thought, oh well, this is all a bit silly and a bit funny, and I really like the memory TARDIS, but I wish it hadn't been shown before in the Tales of the TARDIS thing. I wish it had been a complete surprise.
Of course, that's a function of it having been created for this, but then that happening before this was broadcast.
Yeah.
So that really is the way it should have been. That it came as a surprise here, isn't it? But
yeah. I thought the effects on Sutek were amazing, and I think that maybe is that where a lot of the budget went, just on that, on the big dog.
It can't be. Not for a whole series of television funded by one of the biggest corporations in the world. They spent it all on a big dog.
A big dog and a villa in Tuscany.
But you know, I just get the feeling I probably won't watch it again, because I think if I do watch it again, it's like, you know, it will be the mess that everyone's talking about. Yeah. I think, you know, it's like watching, I don't know, Top Gun or something. I don't know. But a unit is now Odd Squad. That's the series I was trying to think of. Odd Squad.
Right. Okay, then we've seriously overrun, but let's get a final thought. Just one final thought from each of you on the series, either a summing up or something that's not come up, or just a random thought to throw into the ether. Just one final thought on the series. I don't know, Ben, give me a final thought.
Okay, despite it all, I'm glad Doctor Who is back. I think we talked about this in private, is having this Doctor Who better than not having Doctor Who, because we didn't know that there was going to be any after Chris Chibnall. And of course it is. And I'm glad we've got it. And above it all, it's promising, and I'm excited for Series 2.
Mark?
I think the thing I have found is that people who like watched the sort of Eccleston Tennant years that kind of fell away with it have come back. Like just talking to friends of mine that I wouldn't say are Doctor Who fans have come back and really enjoyed it. So maybe that's a good thing. You know, maybe we're all right. Maybe everything's going to be okay. That's my positive with, you know, with
caveats. Dylan.
Yeah.
I mean, please, let's just get some fresh blood behind the scenes. A new showrunner, new writer, new producers. RTD must go.
He's not going anywhere, though, is he? He's got his heels dug in. He's going to be around for... I don't think he'll be show running it, but I think he'll be around for years. And it'll be made in his image, I think, for the next 5 or 10 years, at least.
At least I've got Big Finish.
Simon, final thought from you.
I don't want it to stop being a bit crazy and coming up with some silly ideas. But yeah, as everyone said, just pull back a bit. Don't let it be a George Lucas situation where people don't tap him on the shoulder and say, George, that's not a very good idea.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't want him to keep coming across like an uncle who keeps giving age inappropriate presents to people.
Are we saying that Russell T Davies is basically a cross between George Lucas at the time of the prequels and Donald Trump with his, no, these are the facts. No, you shouldn't believe in what experts tell you and all this kind of crap. Right. We'll be back. Me and a different team probably, because this will be more about the listeners' experience. We'll be back next week, to have the listeners poll the results of that. I can tell you that Boom didn't win it. Until that happens, I was JR.
I've been Ben.
I was Dylan.
I hope England lose, and I've been Mark.
I don't care either way, and I'm Simon.
And we will speak again soon.